This is a response to inquiries from our Patreon community and from the large audience for the Economic Update radio and TV show. A series of questions has come in about the historic significance of the Gilets jaunes or Yellow Vest movement in France, and indeed it has now spread to several other countries. I do think it's a historic event, and so I want to respond to these questions by explaining why. Capitalism is in deep trouble. The crash of 2008 and 9, coming 75 years after the even greater crash of 1930s, was a proof, a sign that capitalism is unable to regulate or reform its way out of the vulnerability to a level of instability that is crushing. On average, over the last 300 years that capitalism has become the dominant system in the world, on average, every 4 to 7 years, we have a downturn, a recession, a depression, a crisis, a cycle. The words keep flowing to describe what we cannot overcome. Every 4 to 7 years, millions are thrown out of work. Production gets cut back. Poverty rises. Unemployment explodes. Countries run out of money, social programs get savaged. By now we all know about it because our lives are punctuated by repeated versions of that interrupt our lives, sometimes destroying our educational opportunities, etc., etc. Everything has been tried to overcome these crises, and it hasn't worked. And I think the 2008 and 9 crisis, proving how earlier reforms and regulations just didn't do the job, drove people over the edge, a kind of straw that broke the camel's back. And masses of people began to understand, finally, that capitalism as a system isn't working for the mass of people. It hasn't for a good long while. And the only times it really did was when mass pressure from below forced it. But left to its own devices, with or without government interference, since after all, the government is bought and purchased by that same capitalist system. No matter what, here we are going through another crisis, with another 10 years, 2008 to 2018, behind us, a kind of lost decade. And so with that crash, the recognition came, we've got to do something. And yes, initially, this took the form of voting for unusual candidates. In America here, we put an African American in the presidency. We had never done that before. Maybe he could do something, but he didn't. And so afterwards, we made an even more extreme movement to a white supremacist fellow who talked differently, acted differently, promised something new and different, and is turning out to be as big a disappointment, if not worse, than Mr. Obama ever was. And the British people voted to leave Europe as if that were their problem. It's hard to face that capitalism is the problem, so you look for another scapegoat. Here in America, we had the Occupy movement. That was a direct reflection of the problems of capitalism. The 1% versus the 99% said it perfectly. And the focus was finally where it belongs, on the economic system, capitalism, and how it works, and the unemployment that we suffer because of it, and the inequality that we suffer, and the instability that keeps haunting our lives. And then we had Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn in England, and new extreme governments, left and right, around the world. Poland, Hungary, now Brazil. But I want to talk about the Yellow Vest movement in France because it is a whole new step. The mass of people are not voting anymore. They're not waiting for the elections. They're not doing docilely what political parties tell them. In France, the mass of people, in the country where you would expect it, went into the streets 7 weeks ago. all across France, demanding that the economic system stop discriminating against the mass of people and stop favoring the precious few at the top who need it least, who bring on these economic turmoils and then shove off the cost of them onto the mass of people. The Yellow Vest movement is the entry of the mass of the American people and the French people and the world's people into politics. The French Revolution led the way some centuries ago, and the Yellow Vest movement is doing it now. Direct intervention. And the reason it'll become very important is because the French have already won in that. They got the tax on their fuel withdrawn. They got their pensions not cut back. They got the minimum wage raised. They got a promise to finally tax the corporations and the rich who evade most of their tax obligations. They got more in 7 weeks of street action than all the political maneuvering of the last decade. And that proof of the effectiveness of street protest means that the Yellow Vest movement in France is going to be changing the way the world works. It is a very powerful, positive sign for the time ahead. This is Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work, thanking you for your support and your interest